This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Mem Beis. We're holding in the bottom of Mem Aleph Amid Beis. A slight apology. I pulled up a drop short, literally another 5 lines, and we would have been at the next Mishnah. But okay, the B'siyata D'Shmaya on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amid Beis. We're up to the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Lo yoichal imai min ha'avos shelafnei ha'paylim. Continuing the theme, one is Maidir Hana, one is not allowed to get benefit from another. You're not allowed to eat with him in an avos. An avos is like a trough, a large amount of food that is placed shelafnei ha'payalim, in front of the workers. And I'm sure many are wondering at this point, why not? We said in the Mishnah that the kaira, the plate, the tamchoy, I should say, the serving plate is the problem, but the tamchoy achoizer is allowed. So the Ran over here speaks out when he speaks about loyachli mai avaloi. The Ran speaks out that you cannot eat together min hatamchoi. Here it is. Avaloichli mai min hatamchoi. Where are we? Here we are. At the end of the narrow line says the Ran. No, I'm quoting the wrong Ran. Okay, so I can't find the Ran, and let's just go straight. Let's continue. Okay. And you're not allowed to work together with him, ba'uman, in a row of a vineyard, divrei Rebbe Meir. You're allowed to work together, but it's only if you are far mimenu from him. Truth is, we really could just see, I was looking all over in the Ran. Let's just look at the Mefayrish right on top of my head on the left side of the page. Says the Mefayrish, Kli Gadol, Shenasan Boi Balabais Yeraka. That the Balabais puts in vegetables. Sha'ich Boi Apoilim, that the workers eat for him, Yachat together, Mishom, Tam Dim Tam Choy. And the Mefayrish explains, as we said, it's very similar to the Tam Choy, that it's not like the tamchoy achoizer. It's not like the serving dish that keeps on getting replenished, even though it is large, but the workers, while they are working, are very hungry. And of course, as Murphy's Law has it, we now have found the Ran. Here it is in the medium-sized line. It's a karagi daila that you place in front of the workers, and because they're working very hard, that was the line I was looking for in the Ran. That when one works very hard, he eats a lot kibehemois. That's the reason why it's in a tamchoy, because they're at some level like a behema at that moment. That's why it's called an avos. Okay, says the Gemara, Bekaroiv loy pligidas. We never argue. The Mishnah, everyone agrees that to work together with the person that you are Maidir Hana closely, everyone agrees that's forbidden. Why? Because when working together, you're weakening and you're softening the ground, and therefore benefiting the other one. Ki pligi, when's the machlokes birach? When you're far away, Ramir Savar Gazvina Rachel Misham Karov, why to come Arbalei La'arakane? Ramir says you make a gizera even when you're far away. Why? Because at the end of the day, the land is getting softened. Rabban and Savri loy gazi. So only machlekes is going to be when there is some distance between the two parties. And we continue with the Mishnah on the top of Mem Beis Amid Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Hamaider Ana Mechaveroi Lifnei Shvius. So when it makes a neder from his friend, let's try that again. So when it makes a neder from his friend before Shemitah, says the Mishnah, what is the halacha? You're not allowed to enter into his field. And you neither could eat from the naitais, the branches that extend, that overhang outside of the field. And during Shemitah, you're not allowed to even enter into his field. Aval, what are you allowed to do? Or just on the naitais, as the Bach says. Then on Shemitah, when everything is hefker, you're allowed to eat from the foliage that is hanging over. That is case A of the Mishnah. Case B of the Mishnah. If you made a neder enough from food, you're allowed to enter into his field. You can't eat from his peiros, because that was the neder. Because on Shemitah, since everything becomes hefker, you could enter and you could eat. So we have to really quantify and clarify what exactly is the case of the Mishnah. but at face value, the Mishnah has two different parts. In part A, the Mishnah said you made a neder before Shemitah. What's the halacha? You can't enter into the field and you cannot eat from that which is hanging over. And then how does that neder extend as Shemitah approaches? You still can't enter, but you could eat from the noitais, you could eat from the branches that extend outside of the field. Case B in the Mishnah is neder from Michael before Shemitah. You can enter into his field. Why? Because the neder is from the food, not in entering into his field. But you're not allowed to eat from the peiros. But during Shemitah, you could enter. So says the Gemara, Rav Shmuel Dari Tervayu. Rav and Shmuel learned together that what is the case of, I shouldn't say what is the case of the Mishnah, we'll get there in a moment. They both learned. If one says, Nechasim Elu Alecha, if someone says these properties, and let's be precise with the case at hand, he says, these properties, wherever they are asur to you, lifnei, asur to you. What's the halacha? Lifnei shviyas, if he made the neder before Shemitah, any other techsateyu, can't enter into his field because there's a neder against all his properties. And you cannot eat from the noitais, you cannot eat from the branches, even that extend outside of the field. And even after Shemitah comes, you still cannot enter his field, and you still cannot eat his stuff. Seemingly why? Because what did you say in the Chasim Elu? This entity, seemingly that this entity transcends time and space, and even during Shemitah, it will be forbidden. But of course, we're going to discuss this today. Ve'im b'shviyas nadar, and if you made a neder on Shemitah, ein yori l'teich sadeh, then you cannot enter the field. Avol, because on Shemitah everything is hefker, so the neder did not take effect on the entities, on the fruit. Therefore, you could eat for them on Shemitah. That is how Rav and Shmuel learned. Rav Yochanan v'Reish Lakish Dami Tervayu Nechasai Olecha. A slightly different word. Now, whether the wording is precise or not, we'll see in a moment. But says Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish, if he says that my properties are forbidden to you, lifnei shviyas, before Shemitah you can't enter, nor can you eat from the fruit. You still can't enter this field, but because in Shemitah everything becomes hefker, you can eat from the overhanged fruit. So seemingly the machlekes Rav Shmuel versus Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish has something to do with the fact, how do we relate his neder to an entity when Shemitah approaches? So suggest the Gemara, what is this machlekes? Let's say that the machlekes Rav Shmuel versus Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish is as follows. The Rav Shmuel, the first opinion, Savri Adam Eiser Davar Sheber Shusai. You can make something that's in your possession forbidden. Afilu Ksheyatzamer Shusai. I can make something forbidden right now, and it retains its status of being forbidden, even when it leaves his rishos. And that's the reason why, according to Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, that's the reason why that they said, you still are not allowed to eat the stuff. You made the neder prior, even though when Shemitah comes, it leaves your rishos, it becomes hefker. Still, Rav and Shmuel say it is forbidden. Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish Savri, no. They disagree, and they hold ein adam oiser davar sheber shusai. You cannot forbid something in your property licheshayatza mer shusai, and therefore Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish are of the opinion that if the neder was made prior to Shemitah, once Higia Shvius, you're allowed to eat from the entity. So suggest the Gemara that what is the machlokes at hand? When I make a neder, when something's in my rishos, does that neder retain its status? Does the fruit remain forbidden even when it leaves my rishos, for example, in this case of Shemitah? So that is step one of the Gemara. Responds to the Gemara of Tizbara. Is what you're saying accurate? Does such an opinion exist that in other might ask the Gemara on Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish? You just said you do not answer something Once it leaves your rishos, it's also in my rishos. Once it leaves, it's a different ball game. So I ask the Gemara, is that true? Is there such an opinion that holds once it leaves your rishos, it goes back and reverts back? It's no longer forbidden. Imkain, if that were to have been true, according to you, Rav Yechon Reish Lakish, niflegi b'nechasim elu. So we should argue, what was the case? What were the words of Rav Yechon and Reish Lakish? Nechasai Olecha, my properties, not these properties, not honing in on a specific entity, but rather global Nichasai Olecha. So says the Gemara, if the impetus, if the crux of Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish is they don't answer something once it leaves your rishos, they should have even said this case in the more extreme case, which is what? Nechasim elu, these properties, and even when these properties leave your rishos, they will no longer be forbidden. One might say that no, it's the item, it's the chefsa that becomes ulcer. So even when it leaves my rishos, it should retain its forbiddance. Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish says no. So they should say that that's where the debate is. V'kol shekain b'nechasai. Question number 1. V'su. Furthermore, ask the Gemara. Tonight we learned to the Mishnah on the Ma'aseh Davar Shever Shusai. L'chshay Yitzim Shusai. You Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish, you're suggesting that once something leaves the rishos, loses its isser, becomes permissible. Says the Gemara, that's contrary to our Mishnah, the Tanan. Ha'omer libnai, if someone says to his son, kainam, sha'ata ne'eneli, that you are forbidden from having benefit from me. Meis, if he dies, you're a shana, then you could, yes, get benefit. Why? Because the whole neder was only made while he was alive. But b'chayavu b'maisai, if he says explicitly that the neder should take effect both in my life and after my death, then, meis, lo yira shana. So ask the Gemara, what do we see? We see very clearly that when one could make a neder and it's going to be applicable, even when the entity leaves his rishos. So asks the Gemara on Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish, how can you suggest otherwise? Answers the Gemara, Shayni Acha, this case is different. Why is this case different? Because the father told his son, Bechayav u'b'maisai. Obviously, the obvious terror is this case is different because in this case the father spoke out explicitly that the Isser should apply in all cases, and that's why it's going to apply even Kishayatza Mir Shusai. Ask the Gemara Mikol Makim Kasha. The first question still remains that Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish should have said a case of Nechasim Elu V'Kol Shekain Nechasai. Answers the Gemara, Elo, you're right. If he said these properties, in that case, no machlaikas. Everyone is going to agree. If he says nechasim elu, that this item retains the iser, I don't care if it leaves my rishos. The chefsa is forbidden. Keep ligi. When is the machlaikas bin nechasai? When I said specifically my nechasim. Rav Shmuel Savi lo shel nechasim elu lo shel nechasai says the first opinion. Rav Shmuel, I don't care. There's no difference. Adam Oyster, a person could, yes, forbid the item even once they leave my rishos. Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish Savri, no. Nechasim elu Adam Oyster, nechasai ein Adam Oyster. Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish say no. If he wanted to answer the item, you would say nechasim elu. The fact that he said nechasai means it will not be forbidden when it leaves his rishos. Continues the Gemara 6 lines down. First one on line is nechasai, asking on Rav and Shmuel. Again, the first question was on Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish. Now we swap it and we ask in Rav and Shmuel, Mikal Mandamar. Is there such a mandamar? You, Rav and Shmuel, just suggested that what? Does such a mandamar exist? But now we learn to the Mishnah. Hopefully this should sound familiar. We had this very recently. I make forbidden your house that I should enter. Your field. Why? Because there's one who was base cha, when it was sadcha, only when it's yours, it's not yours, it's motor. But if he said then it goes on the item then Mesa Shemach Lacher also. So ask the Gemara, you Rav and Shmuel just suggested there's no difference, but we see clearly there is a difference. Answers the Gemara, Al-Ki Amri Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish ben Chasai, V'Rav Shmuel ben Chasam Elu V'lo Yiplihi. So says the Gemara, guess what? There's really no machlokes at all. Rav and Shmuel are discussing a case in the Chasim Elu, and that's why it retains forbidden even once Shemitah comes. Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish is discussing the Chasai, therefore once it leaves your Rishos, it no longer will be forbidden. We conclude today's shir with quoting the end of the Mishnah, which Shriyas in Yer L'Tech Sadeu, asks the Gemara, Maishna da oichel minan noites. What is the reason that you're allowed to eat from the noitais, you're allowed to eat from these branches that extend outside of the field? The reason is the period of Afkeira. The reason is because it's Afker, it's Shemitah, everything is ownerless. So ask the Gemara, Aranami Afkara, the land as well is Hefker. If the land as well is Hefker, therefore one should yes be allowed to even enter into the field. Why did you say you cannot? So Amarullah, this should ring a bell. The Ran quoted this a few days ago. The case is the trees are on the borders, and therefore, well, actually, this answer we didn't have a few days ago. The second answer we did says Ula. The case is that the trees are on the border, and therefore you could access the fruit you could get without actually entering the field. So anytime you could get the period Shvita without actually entering the field, that is what you are required to do. This was the teretz that we had recently. You're right that Medina you're allowed to enter. Medina, it's Shemitah, the field is Hefker. But you know why we say not to? Because we're afraid once you go in, you might tear, you might delay, and that is forbidden. We'll pick up from the Mishnah on the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.